Fried rice has a secret, and most people get it completely wrong. The best version is never made with fresh rice. Day old rice, cold from the fridge, dries out overnight, and the grains separate into individual kernels that hit the wok and fry clean. Fresh rice holds too much moisture and turns the whole pan into paste. Records suggest the technique started in southern China, then moved along trade routes until nearly every rice growing culture on Earth had its own version. Watch a wok toss over high flame and the grains jump like they are alive, each one getting its own hit of heat. Today, fried rice shows up in Chinese takeout, Thai street stalls, Japanese set meals, Peruvian chifa restaurants, and home kitchens across 6 continents. The dish travels because it asks almost nothing, just leftover rice, high heat, and whatever else is nearby. But if fried rice is all about the flame, the next dish is the opposite. The rice barely touches fire at all. Sushi rice is one of the most misunderstood foods on the planet. Most people think sushi means raw fish. It does not. Sushi refers to the rice. The word describes vinegared, seasoned rice, and a sushi roll with no fish at all is still sushi by definition. Many sources trace the tradition to Japan, though fermented fish and rice preservation techniques appear in older Southeast Asian records too. What changed everything was the Edo period shift to quick vinegar rice, which made the dish fast enough to sell commercially. To make it correctly, cooks fold hot rice with rice vinegar while fanning it continuously, cooling it fast and giving the surface a glossy, lightly sticky shine. That gloss is not decoration. It signals the starch has set correctly. Every roll, every nigiri piece, every grocery store sushi tray depends on getting that one preparation exactly right. But where sushi rice demands precision and control, the next dish rewards patience and lets go of everything. Congee looks like something went wrong. A pot of white, thick, almost formless soup that barely resembles rice anymore. But here is the thing, that collapse is the entire point. Congee is rice cooked in far more water than normal, sometimes 10 parts water to 1 part rice, simmered low and slow until the grains fully dissolve into a silky smooth texture with no edges left. Similar rice porridges appear across East and Southeast Asia, and related versions exist in South Asia and West Africa under different names. Chinese diaspora communities carried it across the world, and Filipino and Indian migrants brought their own versions along too. Watch a ladle lift it from the pot and it falls in thick, slow ribbons. Today it shows up as a breakfast staple, a comfort dish, and a base for toppings like fresh ginger, soft-boiled egg, or century egg. Congee breaks the grain down into something closer to liquid. Risotto does something similar, but it uses that breakdown to build something entirely different. Risotto is creamy, deeply creamy, and yet no cream is involved. The entire texture comes from the rice itself, short, oval grains. Varieties like arborio and carnaroli hold a firm starchy center while the outer layer dissolves into the hot broth as they cook. That dissolved outer starch is what creates the sauce. Records suggest short grain rice cultivation in northern Italy, particularly in Lombardy and the Po Valley, dates back several centuries. Italian immigration carried risotto to South America, and it spread from there into restaurants worldwide. Watch someone make it correctly, and the spoon never stops moving. Constant stirring keeps the starch suspended and creates that slow, silky wave of liquid coating each grain from the outside. Frozen risotto is now a major supermarket product globally, sold in single portions in countries where rice was never traditionally grown. But risotto is built entirely on attention and constant motion. Paella is built on the opposite idea. Leave it completely alone and let something extraordinary happen at the bottom. Most people think the word paella refers to the dish. It does not. Paella is the name of the wide, flat, two-handled pan the food is cooked in. The dish is named after its vessel. Many sources point to Valencia, Spain, as the origin, with some accounts describing farm workers cooking over open wood fires using whatever protein and vegetables were available that day. Others trace the shallow pan shape back to Roman flat cooking vessels used across the region centuries earlier. Either way, the pan became the name, and that flat, wide shape is what creates the sauerkraut, the thin, slightly charred rice crust that forms at the very bottom when all the liquid finally cooks off. Getting the sauerkraut right is considered the mark of a skilled cook. Paella spread through Latin America via Spanish colonization and is now adapted with local proteins and regional rice varieties across dozens of countries. But if paella treats the bottom crust as a worthy bonus, the next dish treats it as the entire reason for cooking. In Iran, the bottom of the pot is not a problem to solve. It is the prize everyone at the table is waiting for. Tahdig, which translates roughly to bottom of the pot in Farsi, is the golden crust that forms when rice cooks in oil over low, steady heat with steam trapped above it. Guests at Iranian meals compete openly to get a piece of it. The technique involves wrapping a kitchen towel under the lid of the pot to absorb rising steam and keep the heat even across the whole base, which lets a thin golden layer develop without burning through. It lifts out in one intact piece, crackling and dense. Tahdig traveled with Iranian diaspora communities and has become more widely recognized in Western food culture over recent years. At Iranian celebrations and family dinners, the crust is typically the first thing claimed when the pot hits the table. But while tahdig is about the bottom layer, biryani is about sealing the entire pot and letting pressure do the work. Biryani is not curry poured over rice. That is one of the most common misunderstandings about the dish. It is rice and protein cooked together using a technique called dum cooking, where the pot is sealed tightly with dough or a heavy lid and steam builds up inside, cooking everything simultaneously from above and below in its own trapped heat. Some accounts trace it to Mughal court kitchens. Others describe it as a blend of Persian pilaf methods and South Asian spices that developed and merged over centuries of trade. The rice used is long-grain basmati, which behaves differently from short-grain varieties. When cooked, basmati grains elongate, nearly doubling in length, staying separate and fragrant rather than clumping together. Watch sealed pots in a biryani kitchen and you can sometimes see the lids lifting slightly from the pressure building inside. Today, biryani is among the most ordered delivery dishes across India, Pakistan, and the United Kingdom, with dozens of distinct regional styles. But biryani cooks sealed and controlled. Wild rice does almost the opposite, and it is not even really rice. Wild rice is a grass seed from a completely different plant. It has no close botanical relationship to the rice most people cook with. It grows in shallow lakes and slow-moving rivers, mostly across the Great Lakes region of North America, though related species appear in parts of Asia. Indigenous communities in North America harvested it for generations before European contact, paddling canoes through the water and knocking the tall, feathery stalks so the seeds fall naturally into the boat below. That image, a canoe moving through green water while dark seeds rain down around it, represents one of the oldest continuous food traditions on the continent. Wild rice is now commercially farmed in Minnesota and Canada and shows up in soups, grain bowls, and stuffings, often mixed with regular rice for contrast. But wild rice grows exposed to the open air and water. Rice pudding was invented in secret by dozens of different cultures simultaneously, with none of them knowing about the others. Rice pudding may be the most independently invented dish in food history. A version called kheer exists in India. Scandinavian countries have their own. So do cultures across Latin America, the Middle East, and parts of East Africa. No single point of origin can be confirmed for any of them. Each group figured out the same basic truth separately. When rice simmers slowly in milk, the starch bleeds out of every grain and thickens the liquid from within, with no added thickener needed at any point. Watch a pot of it over low heat, and you can see lazy, slow bubbles pushing up through white cream as it gradually tightens into something dense, sweet, and almost custardy. Today, it is sold in cups and cans and made fresh in homes across dozens of countries in forms that barely resemble each other. One dish uses rice as its own thickener. The next one uses rice that has already been transformed long before it reaches the pan. Nasi goreng is Indonesia's national dish, and it was built from whatever was left over. The whole concept was to use up yesterday's rice and whatever else remained in the kitchen from the day before. Day old rice, leftover protein, odds and ends of vegetables, all of it lands in the pan together. Many sources point to Indonesia as the origin, though similar dishes exist across Malaysia and neighboring regions, and tracing a single starting point is difficult. Indonesian and Malay communities spread it through Southeast Asia, and Dutch colonial trade connections helped carry versions of it further into Europe. The thing that makes nasi goreng visually distinct from other fried rice dishes is kecap manis, a thick, dark, syrup-like soy sauce made from fermented soybeans, dramatically darker and sweeter than standard soy sauce. It coats every grain and turns the whole pan a deep amber brown as it hits the heat. Today, nasi goreng is a common breakfast across Indonesia and Malaysia, found at street stalls at every hour of the day and night, almost always topped with a fried egg. It costs almost nothing to make, but one type of rice was once so rare and controlled that eating it without permission carried real consequences. Black rice was forbidden, not metaphorically, but by rule. Historical accounts describe it as so scarce in China that only the imperial court was permitted to consume it, which is exactly where the name forbidden rice comes from. Records suggest it was cultivated in very limited quantities in China, with some accounts placing related varieties in parts of Southeast Asia as well. For centuries, it remained rare and tightly controlled. Now it is commercially grown in China, Southeast Asia, and parts of the United States and widely available. The color comes from a natural pigment packed densely into the outer layer of each grain, the same family of pigment found in blueberries and purple cabbage. When black rice cooks, that pigment leaches steadily into the surrounding water and turns it a deep, vivid purple that stains everything it touches. Today, it appears in upscale grain bowls, rice puddings, and restaurant dishes where the dramatic purple cooking water becomes part of the visual presentation. But all of that color lives in the outer layer, and one process strips that layer completely away on purpose. White rice and brown rice are the same grain, exactly the same, from the same plant, harvested the same way. Brown rice still carries its outer bran layers intact. White rice has had those layers milled away by machine. In a milling drum, grains tumble together at high speed, rubbing against each other until the brown outer bran flakes off and falls away, leaving the pale white grain underneath. The removed bran does not disappear. It is collected and sold separately as a product on its own. Rice milling has existed for thousands of years across Asia, but industrial-scale milling expanded through the 19th and 20th centuries and made white rice the global default because it stores longer, ships more easily, and cooks faster. Both versions fill grocery shelves in nearly every country today. But while milling takes something away from the grain, the next Japanese dish is built entirely around what the rice absorbs as it cooks. Takikomi gohan looks like a simple rice dish. It is not. It is engineered absorption. The rice does not cook in plain water. It cooks in seasoned broth, typically dashi, mixed with soy sauce and mirin. So every grain swells up already carrying flavor from the inside out rather than being coated on the surface afterward. Vegetables, mushrooms, or small pieces of chicken go in at the same time, and the rice takes on the character of everything around it as it expands and softens. The name translates roughly to rice cooked together with ingredients. The technique has existed in Japanese culinary tradition for centuries and stays largely within Japanese home cooking today, though related pilaf methods appear across Asia. Watch the amber broth level drop slowly in a rice cooker as the grains expand and the liquid disappears entirely into each kernel. Today, it is a common weeknight meal made in households across Japan, adapted to whatever vegetables or proteins are in season. That principle of rice absorbing everything around it runs deep across many cultures. But one West African dish took the idea and turned it into one of the most passionate ongoing arguments in food history. Jollof rice is not just a dish, it is a cultural event and a long running dispute. The debate over which country makes the definitive version, Nigeria, Ghana, or Senegal, has run for years across the internet and at dinner tables worldwide, with entire communities drawing firm lines. Some accounts trace Jollof to the Wolof people of Senegal and the Gambia. Others argue that each country's version developed independently enough to stand as its own distinct dish entirely. The base starts with tomatoes and peppers blended smooth and then cooked down in hot oil until all the water burns away and only a thick, concentrated, deeply red paste remains. Rice goes directly into that paste and absorbs it fully as it cooks, every grain coated red-orange from the inside. Jollof is central to West African celebrations, weddings, and large gatherings, and diaspora communities carried it to cities worldwide. Now consider that rice can explode, not from pressure applied to it from outside, but from pressure that builds and detonates from within the grain itself. Puffed rice is made by exposing grains to extreme heat until the moisture locked inside them converts to steam faster than the outer shell can vent it. The grain bursts outward, expanding to many times its original size in a fraction of a second. Records suggest the technique has been practiced in South Asia, particularly in Bangladesh and India, for centuries, traditionally using clay pots filled with superheated sand that transfer heat almost instantly to each grain. Similar techniques developed separately in parts of the Americas. Industrial versions spread through the early 20th century and became the foundation for packaged cereals sold in nearly every country on earth. Today, puffed rice appears in bhel puri street food across India, in crispy rice toppings at sushi restaurants, pressed into rice cakes sold in supermarkets, and snapping in bowls of cereal worldwide, all because of water trapped inside a grain that had nowhere left to go.